Welcome everyone to Sustainability Unraveled, a podcast presented by TÜV SÜD. My name is Laura Oberhausen and I'm your host, and joining me is my wonderful co-host Cornelius Dalm. Our podcast is dedicated to delving into the intricate world of sustainability, offering valuable insights to empower businesses on their journey towards a greener future.
A warm welcome also from my side. Today we prepared an exciting topic that affects all of us, from source to storage. The path to green energy transition. As the world races to combat climate change, the transition to sustainable energy sources has become more urgent than ever. But it's not just about where we get our energy from, it's also about how we distribute it and how we store it. And that's something we will find out today.
Absolutely, Cornelius. And as you just mentioned, the journey spans from the source, where renewable energy is generated, all the way to the energy infrastructure and cutting-edge storage solutions. The challenges and innovations along the way might seem difficult, but in the end they're fascinating and also present many opportunities.
Indeed, Laura. We'll explore how various industries are embracing green energy solutions and ensuring that energy is available when and where needed. We'll dive into the strategies and technologies that are shaping the future energy production, distribution, and storage.
From innovative solar farms to advanced battery storage solutions, today's episode will cover the entire spectrum. We'll discuss how companies are using these solutions to not only reduce their carbon footprint, but also improve their overall resilience. We'll also look at the role of governments, regulatory frameworks, and partnerships in driving this transition. I can say this much in advance. It's a collaborative effort that requires actions on many fronts.
So whether you're a sustainability expert, a business leader looking to drive sustainability, or simply curious about the future of our energy generation and storage, this episode is for you.
Before we dive into the topic, let's set the scene. The world's population and obviously the global energy consumption are growing rapidly. The global electricity demand is expected to more than double by mid-century compared to the 2020 levels. This reflects the urgent need for sustainable energy solutions.
Absolutely, Laura. In the 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario, the share of renewable energy in the world's primary energy supply has to grow from currently 16% to 77% in 2050, requiring an annual growth rate 13 times the current rate. Investments in renewables reached $0.5 trillion in 2022. However, this is less than 1/3 of the average investment needed each year in renewables under the 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario. Furthermore, 85% of global renewable energy investment in 2022 benefited less than 50% of the world's population, and Africa accounted for only 1% of the additional capacity in 2022.
Another important factor, or let's say argument, we often hear is that the sun is not shining at night and wind turbines don't rotate on calm days. So therefore, an essential factor for a successful green energy transition is the further technical development and significant scaling of energy storage solutions. And then going hand in hand is the expansion of the grid infrastructure. Grid-scale storage solutions will be essential to manage the impact on the power grid and handle the hourly and seasonal variations in renewable electricity output while keeping grids stable and reliable in the face of growing demand.
That is precisely at the heart of the matter, Laura, and that's where the concept of energy storage comes into play. Energy storage technologies enable the storage and release of renewable energy as needed, hence balancing energy supply and demand. Although progress has been slow in recent years, energy storage deployment worldwide is expected to pick up in the coming decade. Just to give you an example, in 2020, around 29 gigawatt hours have been deployed worldwide. By 2030, the cumulative capacity is forecasted to surpass 700 gigawatt hours.
And the benefits are huge. Energy storage helps to reduce carbon emissions, enhances energy security, and improves resilience in our energy systems. But the shift towards energy storage is not only about balancing supply and demand, but also about creating a more resilient and sustainable energy infrastructure. And it's not just about standalone solutions. The integration of these technologies into existing grids is a complex yet exciting challenge.
We're excited to deep dive into this topic with our expert joining us today, Alexander Heitmann. Alexander, could you please share some insights into your background and tell us what sparked your interest into the field of sustainable energy?
Hello, Laura. Hello, Cornelius. Thank you very much for inviting me to this podcast. I'm very much looking forward to our today's discussion. But first of all, let me start with a few words about myself. I've been already fascinated by the idea of using the wind and the sun to generate energy in a modern world since I was a schoolboy. So I was very happy to find a university that offered a specialization in renewable energy technologies already in the early 2000s. Luckily, I was able to start my career directly in the wind energy sector in 2005, and since then I have worked in various technical and management positions within the renewable energy sector. And now I'm very happy to represent TÜV SÜD as Global Business Line Manager for our Renewable Energy Services. And by doing this, driving our global strategic development and our global strategic delivery together with my various colleagues around the world.
It's great to have you here, Alexander. To start, could you please provide us with an overview of the renewable energy landscape, meaning the status quo of the worldwide numbers and maybe also associated challenges?
Yes, sure. In recent years, we have seen a significant increase in installed renewable energy capacity worldwide. For example, 2022 was the third highest year on record for wind power in terms of installed capacity. Nearly 78 gigawatt of capacity was added, according to the Global Wind Energy Council. However, these figures will increase dramatically compared to the targets set by the several countries around the world. And again, the GWEC predicts that by 2027, annual installations will be around twice as high as in last year. And that is certainly not the end of the story. And yes, such significant growth will, of course, pose major challenges for the industry and for the society. I would like to highlight three major issues that have already been identified by the industry and are being addressed by all stakeholders. First point is the people and the skills. The second one is the supply chain of the components, materials, and the equipment. And the third one is the infrastructure and the integration of the assets in the overall system.
Thanks, Alexander. Let's keep these 3 points in mind here because we will talk about them in detail in just a moment. But before we do so, I would like to start by understanding the different stages of this, let's call it, journey. Could you walk us through the steps from energy generation to infrastructure upgrades to energy storage? And in doing so, could you please focus especially on the context of the green energy transition?
Yes, so first, a huge number of renewable energy assets, such as onshore and offshore wind farms or PV power plants, need to be built. Then all the assets need to be connected and integrated into our energy system, with the two main challenges and drivers for our way forward to be solved. The first one is the time synchronization of demand and production, and the second one is the geographical synchronization of the demand and the production. And last but not least, given by the nature of the sun and wind, both are different from our current system and require new infrastructure and integration systems such as new grid connections, grid transport systems, and storage systems.
I would like to come back to the 3 pillars you just mentioned. Alexander, can you please further specify what you mean by the aspect people and skills?
According to a recently published study by the Boston Consulting Group, the renewable energy industry, including the battery storage industry, will be short of about 7 million skilled people globally by 2030 to meet the actual targets. This is, of course, a remarkable figure. When we talk about these skilled people, we have to look at different disciplines such as electrical, civil, mechanical engineering, and also at different levels of qualification. On the one hand, we have to address the new construction of products and projects, which means that we need people in all phases and areas of design, manufacturing, and construction. And on the other hand, along with this high level of new construction, we also need qualified people to operate, maintain, and repair these assets. In addition, we should not forget to invest in further research, design, and development of these technologies and projects. All in all, we have to accept that this impressive growth potential of the industry is heavily dependent on skilled people to drive this transformation. And this means that we have to address both aspects: the sheer increase in the number of people within the industry, and this coupled with a significant skills initiative for career changes and young graduates.
I absolutely agree. And in addition to the human factor you just mentioned, there are other developments that I would like to discuss with you in more detail. So When we take a closer look at the supply chain for components, materials, and equipments in terms of the energy transition, what are the international developments and perhaps differences and or challenges?
This ambitious growth in installed renewable energy capacity directly implies the need for a significant increase in the production capacity of all the necessary components. And again, we are talking about a wide range of components and intermediates. Let me give you an example. The installation of an offshore wind farm requires not only the wind turbine, but also the offshore foundations and the cables, which connect the wind farm to the grid. In order to realize this, it is also necessary to install substations as connection points for the several wind turbines installed in the sea. These substations are either located directly in the sea or on land, depending on the distance of the wind farm from the shore. If we now look one level deeper, we will see various intermediate components such as steel towers and monopiles and jackets, or other types of foundations. A wind turbine itself is made up of several main components and various subcomponents. And this can for sure be further broken down and is also true for the other renewables. We therefore have a high demand for additional new manufacturing capacity for a variety of products and components. And the other dimension of this manufacturing expansion is the regional footprint. Growth in renewable energy will be global. Demand for production will therefore follow this regional development. This will be driven on the one hand by the growing importance of the carbon footprint of transport, and on the other hand by government requirements, which are already increasing in terms of local content. So finally, this rapid expansion will pose a challenge for all manufacturers to ensure the quality of the products.
Thanks, Alexander. I believe it doesn't end with the challenges in the supply chain. What about the current grid infrastructure? Are our electricity grids prepared for the future? And if not, what needs to be done in your point of view?
So because of the nature of renewable energy, as I described before, the grid infrastructure also needs to change. So far, we have kind of a centralized power generation, driven by conventional and nuclear power plants, mainly close to the areas of consumption. This is already changing. We are seeing more and more decentralized generation, onshore wind farms and PV power plants, combined with a large increase in multi-gigawatt offshore wind farms. Neither of these are usually close to the places of consumption, so we need both new geographical power lines connecting production with the consumption areas, and secondly, in parallel, an upgraded grid infrastructure that takes into account the various decentralized production facilities.
And as you already mentioned, we have to deal with the differences in production and consumption times, which also leads me to my next question. How are companies using innovative energy storage solutions to improve their operations and sustainability efforts?
So if we are looking at the energy price market today as a starting point, we can see periods of very low or even negative prices and periods of very high prices, always following the market principle of supply and demand. This volatility will continue to increase as renewable assets grow. So it is not just a question of the physical need for storage, it is also a question of profitability. Let me give you 3 examples on that. So project developers of renewable assets have already started to develop combined assets. This means they are integrating, for example, hydrogen production in their project. The main ideas are to be able to sell either the hydrogen or to control the timing of the electricity sales. Secondly, new standalone business models will emerge for storage capacity. For example, buying electricity when it's cheap and selling it when it is expensive. And finally, the consuming industry could also intelligently adjust the timing of its own energy consumption, always depending on the availability. And thirdly, the consuming industry could intelligently adjust the timing of its own energy consumption, always depending on the availability of cheaper energy to be more competitive on the market.
Thanks, Alexander, for these examples. Do you actually see any local differences or different approaches in the world, and also different political behavior from the governments?
So in general, almost all countries have targets and ambitions to increase the share of renewable energy. But yes, the ways in which this is being promoted vary. For example, we see different approaches to auctions and tender processes for new project development areas in different countries. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, local governments have different local content strategies in place for the industry itself. And another important point is the difference in local regulations and the approval processes.
Are there any other challenges to transition the green energy generation to full renewable energy sources, and how can these challenges be overcome?
Unfortunately, yes. Let me give you just 2 examples on that. The transformation is going to cause a significant change in almost everyone's backyard, or at least everyone's perception of it. New wind turbines and PV systems as well as power lines will have to be built in the countries. And we need to make people aware of the importance of this and that it will have a positive effect on long-term development. That is why politicians and industry have to get on board. The second issue is another point for politicians around the world. We need a long-term, stable and effective framework for all stakeholders to invest, develop and finally build the new energy infrastructure as soon as possible to achieve our ambitious green energy transformation. And this is where there is room for improvement.
You just mentioned aspects that definitely also reflect opportunities. Are there other ones that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, definitely. There will certainly be opportunities. First and foremost, the fight against the global warming and climate change with all the negative consequences for everyone. But of course, there will also be opportunities for industry and society from a more direct perspective. Significant new industry growth always means new jobs and new business opportunities. And this will be created not only in the implementation phase, but also in the operational phase of renewable power plants. And with the further growth of renewables as the energy supplier of the future, there could be a geographical shift in business creation. New emerging locations could therefore benefit from locating and producing electricity, both for their own use and for sale to the market.
Perhaps to follow up on my previous question, are there recent advancements in renewable energy generation technologies that also could be considered as opportunities?
Oh yes, we are already seeing many detailed innovations across all renewable technologies. This ranges, for example, from digitalization in all project phases to specific component innovations. From a higher perspective, there are also other technologies that are exploring the use of renewables, such as the use of floating foundations for wind turbines or even PV modules. And another very important development will be the common standard integration of the renewables in the real estate, but also in the general infrastructure and agriculture sector as a kind of a future really standardized construction.
For my last question, I would like to change perspective. Alexander, could you please tell us about TÜV SÜD's role in supporting companies along the green energy transition journey?
Supporting safe and reliable industry and technology development has been in TÜV SÜD's DNA since the very beginning. With our engineers and experts, we are ready to support the energy transition industry with a focus on the safe, reliable and efficient development, the construction and the operation of the renewable energy plants and the necessary infrastructure coming along with it.
Before we end this episode, I wanted to take the opportunity to ask you about your predictions for the future. How do you see the future for the green energy transition and also the energy landscape evolving over the next decade?
So let me give you a little bit of a personal optimism and hope to your question. I would see after another 3 to 4 bumpy years of ups and downs in the development of renewables, we will enter into a phase of very strong and focused development. And in parallel, we will see various technological innovations supporting this and a society that will not only see the indirect but also the direct benefits of this development.
Thanks a lot, Alexander, also for this really positive outlook in the end. Let's wrap up this episode with our key takeaways. My number one is that the world is in the urgent need of transitioning to sustainable energy sources due to the rapid growth in global energy demand and the critical goal of fighting climate change.
Takeaway number 2, the transition poses challenges including the need for skilled professionals, supply chain expansion, and infrastructure upgrades. Ambitious targets require a significant increase in renewable energy's share of the global energy supply.
A third point is the importance of energy storage technologies, as they are essential for balancing supply and demand in renewable energy. They enhance energy security and help to manage volatility in energy prices. Significant growth in energy storage deployment is expected in the coming decade.
And lastly, the transition is quite complex as it involves multiple stages from building renewable energy assets to upgrading grid infrastructure and integrating energy storage. Challenges include time and geographical synchronization of energy production and consumption. Alexander, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so the green energy transition offers opportunities for job creation, business growth, and addressing the climate change. Therefore, it is really important for businesses to proactively embrace the green energy transition for their long-term company success, for the sustainability and the resilience of their business.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Sustainability Unraveled, where we've explored the critical issue of the green energy transition and its journey from production to distribution and storage. We hope you've gained some interesting insights from our expert, Alexander.
Our podcast is packed with valuable information and engaging discussions with experts from a range of sustainability fields. By subscribing, you'll be the first to discover our latest episodes. So don't miss out the opportunity to expand your knowledge and take action towards a more sustainable future.
And as always, we value your feedback and welcome suggestions for future episodes. Your input drives the conversation and helps us bring you the most relevant and insightful content. Together, let's keep this podcast vibrant and meaningful as we navigate the path towards a more sustainable world. Talk to you soon.